I don't know what I thought. But hi, everyone. It's really amazing to be here, and I'm really excited about this panel, in particular because of you two ladies, because I know you're going to be coming at this topic from two completely different perspectives. But I'm going to start with a little bit of an intro, and I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, and then we'll launch right straight into it, okay? So I'm Winnie. I'm the founder and CEO of Cara, a hair care personalization platform focused on textured hair. And Billie already mentioned my work within the British Beauty Council focused on DEI. And I'd love to pass to you, Tumi. Could you give us a little intro, please?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Tumi. I like to brand myself as the beauty chemist. I am a cosmetic scientist and currently working with the Gel Bottle. They are a professional gel polish brand. And I think I'm also a STEM ambassador for...
Yes, you are.
Yeah. Okay, I'm definitely a STEM ambassador
and you've
for the
spoken
British
for us
Beauty
before.
Council.
You've done something for us before as well, haven't you?
Yeah, so I've helped and spoken at Downing Street on the value of STEM careers and diversity in that aspect.
Amazing. I can't really follow that.
Yes, you can.
I'm Billie, a writer and brand consultant. My background has been in magazines for the past 10 years. I started at Elle and then recently finished a job at Stylist as their fashion and beauty director. And yeah, just a lover of all things fashion and beauty, but particularly beauty today.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, ladies. I'd love to kick off with a quote from Edward Enninful. He said this: if you put one model in a show or an ad campaign, that doesn't solve the problem. We need teachers in universities, we need internships, we need people from different backgrounds in all parts of industry. That is really the solution. You have to change it from the inside. And I really think that this is a perfect jump-off point because, to me, your background is in the sciences, in formulation chemist. Formulation chemist. You are a formulation chemist. And Billie, you write across fashion and beauty topics. So let's kick off. Starting with you, Billie. What does representation look like in the beauty industry?
I think it's so evolving and so changing. And when I think back to when I first started in magazines and the lack of representation then to where we are now, like we really have as an industry come along so much. There is still so far to go. But I think when I first started, I kind of didn't really recognise that I wasn't represented in magazines because I was just so used to what I saw. I was so used to seeing the same faces, the same body types, the same skin tones, the same hair. Like I just thought that was the standard of beauty and that's what we should accept. And it wasn't until I think I questioned that within myself before I questioned it broadly that I was like, actually this is a problem. This is a problem that I don't feel beautiful. I don't feel represented. I don't feel part of the industry, part of the conversation, part of anything that's beauty related. And you have to sort of like be bold and say, hello, hi, I exist too, and like I'd really like to buy that lipstick and I'd really love to wear that foundation. So I think representation in the industry is getting somewhere. It's got a way to go, but I think the cogs are in motion to be a better space than it has been in the last 10 years.
Thanks so much for that perspective, because you just took me right back to my uni days when I had a subscription for Vogue, and they released this piece where they had all the Vogue covers for the last 50 years, and I really wanted it as a fashion girly, and it's still in my kitchen at the moment, but it's actually quite poignant that it's there now, if you consider maybe, for instance, how different Vogue has changed, especially with people like yourselves writing and offering additional voices to the conversation. I'd love to hear from you, Tumi, coming through from a science perspective and formulation of products. What does representation in the beauty industry look like?
Yeah, sure. So I think that representation on a whole is about seeing people that look like us in mainstream outlets, etc. But when you look at product development, many times, especially in testing and conceptualizing products, the end user usually is a specific demographic that doesn't necessarily represent everybody in the industry. And I feel one of the frustrations or pain points that we've had in formulation is because the default is a specific demographic, we kind of just have to accept that. Because there's a lot of money that goes into testing, and sometimes brands don't necessarily have the resources to fund the appropriate testing that everyone can use, I guess. And when we're making those products, they'll come out with a product and be like, for all hair types or for all skin types. But according to who? Because who did you test on?
Yeah.
Because you're saying that obviously from a marketing perspective, but from a product development perspective, is that really true? But we are getting places. I think that there are more diverse people in product development spaces, and I think a lot of us are pushing for, actually we need to have more people on different scale, the Fitzpatrick scale included, all 6 types and not type 1 to 3. So we're getting somewhere, but there's still more to do.
For all hair types is actually my bugbear, because it just like sets off my spidey senses, because it makes me think, is it really? Can I really trust that? And I think this statistics actually is quite interesting. So right now, the British beauty industry supports a total GDP contribution of 24.5 billion, and this is a bigger contribution than UK's creative arts and entertainment sectors put together. And I think with that in mind, it will be interesting. Let's start with you, Tumi. Why do you think representation is so important in the supply chain, or maybe actually in the industry as a whole?
I just think that representation means I feel included. It means that I have access to these things, that it's not just for a specific category. It means that this was made with me in mind. And, it's quite hard because there's so many different types of people, generally speaking. But I do think that we could be open-minded and include everyone on the Fitzpatrick scale, everyone from types 1 to 4 hair type, and even people with perhaps different nail shapes. Megan Fox has cupped thumb. How often do we see cupped thumb on media outlets and stuff? Mainstream. I just kind of feel like we can do more to include people.
Yeah, there's an even bigger opportunity that exists, isn't there? And how about from your perspective?
I think it's such a huge industry, as you've just outlined, that it just doesn't make business sense not to include more people in that conversation. And to feel considered by something, I think, is it shouldn't be a privilege to feel like someone has thought about you, for whether that's a product or an image that you've seen, or feeling like you could be part of a brand. And that's why I think brands like Nike, they excel, because they are so good at making sure that everybody is included in the conversation. I can go into the store and buy a pair of leggings, and I think that where beauty sometimes thinks they've just done their due diligence is by an extended foundation range, or considering 1 or 2 different hair types, or a different tone, or a different texture. But that it's not good enough for an industry that is that big and is that important to our economy to not actually really think, okay, who are we considering? I remember I went and bought a concealer recently from Space NK, and I was honestly shocked. There was no ashy tone. It wasn't it didn't make me look grey. It was warm. And then I talked to the PR team about it, and they're like, because it's made by somebody who's Middle Eastern, so they can understand different tones and different warmths of skin and coldness and olive tones and stuff. And it's those conversations that we need to make sure that we're having, so that it can be a more inclusive space.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I get really excited whenever I watch Fenty or Savage Beauty, their shows, because it really opens your eyes as to what's possible. And of course, this goes beyond hair care, skin care. We're looking at all abilities, we're looking at all age ranges, truly ensuring that people are seen. So thank you for those answers. If we switch to testing and turning our attention to STEM, something I know that you're so passionate about, why do you think science and tech is overlooked in the beauty industry?
Well, I guess me being a child of the 80s, grew up in the 90s, when you think about science and being at school and what was perhaps associated with chemistry and physics, I think people like Charles Darwin, Stephen Hawking, and even on TV, you come home from school and you watch Cartoon Network and you watch Dexter's Laboratory. It's really naughty boy telling his sister, hey, girls don't belong in the lab. Go back to where you came from. And he's like, please, I just want to come into the lab. But no, it's this narrative that has been playing on our minds that women don't actually belong in the lab. And when I thought about chemistry, my family were pushing me towards medicine because they felt like medicine was a more stable career. When you think about it, chemistry, beauty sound like two worlds apart, but the actuality of it is science underpins all industries, whether that be food, car, whatever industry, science underpins all of them. So science is probably one of the most flexible careers that you can access and take with you into beauty. I think people sort of have always seen beauty as a service-led industry, my hair, my makeup and all the rest of it, but who's making your hair products? But who's making your makeup? Even down to the toothpaste and the shower gel and the mouthwash and the deodorant that you've used. If you want to take makeup out of the conversation, somebody made that. And when I was younger, even the course that I did for university was only 10 years old when I joined.
Okay.
And when you think about other university courses, they've been around for decades and years. Cosmetic science, I guess, has only just really been recognised as something worth tapping into. And I think just it not necessarily being a thing before, people haven't necessarily associated science with beauty because it seemed like it was two worlds apart, but actually it goes hand in hand.
Yeah, completely intertwined. Whereas we have this expectation that beauty is just this thing that you did, this plaything that you did. Yeah. From your perspective, I'm curious to hear through your own personal journey, Billie. Why do you think it's been overlooked?
I didn't realise when I joined the beauty industry how much science is involved in everything. I kind of naively thought quite frivolously about the industry. I was like, I just want to look nice and that's what's going to get me there. But it is underpinned by science, as science is crucial to all of it. And you need to understand that the science for one person is not the same for the other. And that's why, more women need to be involved in science when it comes to beauty, because ultimately they're the consumers that are buying into this massive industry. And sometimes I find the science a little bit overwhelming, like I need you to give me a lesson. But it's like you have to understand the science of your skin in order to get these things that everyone's after. Like people want glowing skin and like thick, beautiful hair, but we can't just look at a product and be like, okay, that's enough. I think now it's about educating ourselves on the science and how that's actually affecting us, and the bigger conversation around that, like women's health and hormones and how that affects the science and how that affects beauty products too.
That is, yes, absolutely. There's so much we actually don't know, especially when you start going into the realm of, women's hormones. I actually saw that it was only recently, and by recent I think the 80s, that women were officially allowed to be part of clinical studies, which is completely completely mind-boggling. Because actually it was due to their hormones, they weren't considered stable enough subjects to contribute. Seriously. Do you guys see that ad? I think there's a brand called Fertility, and they had billboards everywhere, and it was like, you're overreacting. But we absolutely need to be included in these conversations. And you did ask for a chemistry lesson. We're going to get one from you in a minute. So, Tumi, this one's for you. So, how do STEM roles actually operate within a beauty brand?
Yeah, sure. So STEM is science, technology, engineering and mathematics. So from a science point of view, that could be the chemists that are making the products.
Okay.
From a technology point of view, that could be the graphics designer who is doing the 3D mock-ups on packaging. from an engineering point of view, goes in hand with the science part, which is chemistry and making product development. And in mathematics, it could be interpreting the data and sales for the brand. I'll just give an example of the Java, just because they have sponsored this panel, and we are a 100% women team.
Okay.
So there are multiple people from different ethnic backgrounds in that. We're young, millennial. I think why that is important is because we can drive change. I think the generation before us are perhaps set in their ways, stuck a little bit, but it takes for a younger generation of people to be able to be a force. But generally speaking, STEM is everywhere. And even though we've been conditioned to believe that mathematics means accounting and all the rest of it, maths is just simply calculating. I need to calculate that, how am I going to make this product? And we calculate every day. And I think that we shouldn't underestimate and think that STEM is this rigid thing that we couldn't apply to anything. It's definitely valid in product development.
Thank you for that. For anyone who's got kids who are choosing what their kids study. Now is the opportunity. Actually, you don't even need to have kids. I think that women, or actually not just women, anyone can go back to uni at any point they want to, can't they? From your perspective, knowing what you do today and in your new capacity, your current capacity as a writer, why do you think, in what ways, even if we look at it through the journalism industry, are there any applications for STEM that you see within that space?
Not really.
Okay.
I think it's. I think they're kept quite separate.
Okay.
But we rely on the experts to kind of feed us the information, and then we can give it to people in an accessible way, so they can understand the journey of the product and how that's going to affect you and what's gone into it. But it's kept quite separate.
Okay, amazing. Thank you for that. Okay, so. Now, moving on to the last question, which hopefully will open up conversations. I hope you've been saving all your questions. So what work is there to do to ensure the beauty industry continues to support diversity, equity, and inclusion now and beyond?
I definitely think that being HR, not just putting people of colour on the HR poster, but actually recruiting, and not necessarily on an executive level, also from a senior leadership point of view, because we need people that are actually driving that change and have that influence. Having a advisory board in some ways, people of all different demographics on board who give suggestions as to how change can be made. Just keep that conversation open. But I think what I'm really impressed by is that, like I said earlier, it's a new generation of people, and we are so active about creating change, and that is really promising, because I know my mum's generation is very like, it is what it is kind of thing, whereas we're not stopping at it is what it is. We are actually trying to drive the conversation forward. So having that advisory board for any brand in place is beneficial for the advancement of the beauty industry. Just being proactive, really. I think that's the biggest point about your recruitment process, as well as the products that you're making for people.
Amazing, thank you. And how about from your perspective, Billie?
I mean, I echo everything Tumi just said. I think it has to start from the bottom, but it also needs to be echoed at the top. I think it's so important just to challenge everything and not just accept something as fact. And I think that's a learning that I definitely took away from life in magazines. I was so used to just, like I said, seeing things and not questioning why they were happening or what we could do to change them. But it isn't until you actually pose that question to someone who's in a position of power that can make that change that something can happen. So I think it's you've got where you can challenge everything that you see and say, okay, have we thought about this from every angle? Have we thought about this from every perspective? If not, we don't hold those perspectives, so let's get those people in, let's ask those people those questions, and just not accepting that's just the way that it is and that's the way that things are done, because there is space for absolutely everybody in the beauty industry, and that's one thing I really love about it, that it really can be for everybody. We just need to make sure it gets there.
So there's room to absolutely advocate and use our voice to its max capacity, because we all deserve a seat at the table in the beauty industry and also across multiple industries. How are you both feeling in terms of the future? How are you feeling? Are you optimistic?
Yeah, I am optimistic. I think so much of my background was fashion before I moved into beauty, and the biggest thing I loved about the beauty industry was that there was so much more optimism in beauty than there was in fashion. Like, there are so many more doors closed in fashion, and it's like this concrete building that nobody wants to change or move, and it's completely unmalleable. And the beauty industry is so much more fluid. Like, I think it's so much more receptive to change, and we've seen that through like the beauty products that are coming out, like Patrick Starr and Fenty and millions of others that really represent a wider community of people. That is the world. That is the world of people. Like, it's not just one person. So I'm hopeful that, I think if we have loud voices in this industry, we can get there.
Amazing. Tell me, Tumi.
The same as No, I'm echoing everything that you said. No, I'm excited. If you've got loud voices, was it you who that said loud voices, that we'll definitely get there. Yeah, it's promising. It's looking promising.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, you both, for just bringing your experiences, giving us a different perspective through both science and also through journalism. That was really helpful, and thank you. Can we put a round of applause for us? Amazing. So I'd love to open it up for questions, because I'm sure we've not covered everything and you have thoughts. So tell me.
Thank you so much for being change makers. I'd love to know, you said you stand your ground and you're very vocal. How do you deal with pushback, or do you ever get pushback? It's so good that you're so positive. Because Billie, when I worked on fashion magazines as well, Condé Nast over 20 years ago, and I stuck out like a sore brown thumb, imposter syndrome and everything. So it's so inspiring to hear that you're so positive about change, because diversity wasn't a thing then. So how do you deal with pushback, and do you ever get it? Are your voices heard? Because representation and diversity are two different things, as we see in the government today. So I'd love to know how you stand your ground.
For me, it's just about having courage. Having courage and being sure about what you stand for. As someone who has a large following on LinkedIn, I say my mind. You either get on board with it or you don't like it, kind of thing. But I think that even people don't like your post, they're watching. And I think it's inspiring change in minds. And people are like, okay, so why do we keep doing it like this? Like, why haven't we considered something else? I think it's about having courage and being very sure about what you stand for and being vocal about that. And everyone, because oftentimes we're thinking things, no one's saying it. And then it just takes for one person to say it. And then everyone's like, okay, yeah, I get on board with that kind of thing. And then you have a whole tribe of people that want that same change as you. So I think it's about standing your ground, having courage, and saying the right things in the right rooms.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think with pushback, it's really crucial to have like a support network. And I've been so fortunate in the magazines that I've worked at, and it was always the juniors, like, all the assistants kind of banded together. And if you're like, I pitched this idea that would have had more representation or more inclusion, and people didn't really go for it, and they're like, right, well, we're going to come in the room with you next time and we're going to push for this too. And it's kind of getting your people together. And it often is the younger ones trying to disrupt what has been, or what we have known as just fact. But I think you do totally have to be brave, and that's really hard to do all the time. Like, sometimes you feel like, oh, I'm just fighting this fight. And to your point, like, the first magazine I worked at, I was the only plus-size woman, I was the only person of colour, And I was just silent throughout my entire time there because I just didn't know like what to say or what to do. But then I was compliant because I didn't stand up against it. And then when I moved to another magazine and I felt more comfortable, that I felt supported, that's when I was brave enough to question what we were doing and why we were doing it. But it's tough. But I think having young people is a big step forward.
And if I can just add, just show up the data as well.
Yeah.
I think no one can really argue with cold hard facts. So don't be afraid if you have data at your fingertips to show it up. Within my space in textured hair, we know, for instance, that Black women spend 9 times more in comparison to people with straight hair. I constantly lead with that as a vehicle for change in the services that are available, the products that are available, and no one can really deny that. So I'll also encourage, in addition to what you both have said, lead with the data as well.
That's a powerful one, showing up with the facts.
Yeah.
No, you can't argue with the facts. It is what it is.
Yes.
Which brand do you feel, firstly thank you everyone, which brand do you feel is totally nailing the whole diversity space currently? Or kind of, is inspiring?
I think Fenty was so groundbreaking across so many different aspects, and I was really lucky and went to the Savage Fenty show in Brooklyn, the first one. And I cried.
Wow.
It was so impactful. We weren't allowed our phones, which was the best thing, and they took them all off us, and it was so incredible to see so many women of different abilities, different backgrounds, different races, different sizes, different everything, that I was like, okay, wow, this is a real moment. And I think Fenty has been really brilliant at keeping that momentum of change as well as representation in the industry. But I'm sure there's plenty more.
There's a new brand in the States called Amy Collet. It's also another cosmetics brand. And I think she's so authentic, the way she tells her stories. The reason why she created the brand is because, her mom used to be a hairdresser in Brooklyn. She's really going even deeper than what Fenty has done and looking at really dark skin tones, looking at the undertones. And the campaigns are also fresh and amazing. So yeah, I think they're doing a good job.
Hi, mine is not so much of a question, but to say a thank you all, because you're the youngsters, I'm probably the same age as your mum. But when I started out, there wasn't a cosmetic science thing. And I was quite sad because there was not that, people moving forward, persons of colour, moving forward in these industries that you are in. And I'm so glad that the youngsters are really pushing forward to really open that door and say, hi, we're here. We are going to always be here and we're going to fight this. And I thank you for that.
Do you know what? Sorry, this isn't even a question or anything. I think I really enjoyed listening to that. It brought me back to the days of Mary Kay. I don't know if anyone knows Mary Kay, but they one of the first brands, American brands, that came into Debenhams back in the day, and you would see all the women of colour lining up for their counters because they did the shades of foundation for. And my mum had the eyeshadow palette. I think it had like 50 colours. You're supposed to keep your eyeshadow for like 6 months. My mum had that thing for like 7 years. And it's just, even though Mary Kay exists, but not in the UK as it did, it's just so nice to see over the last 15 years that we've come such a long way. I know Rihanna broke the internet with Fenty, but then after Fenty came Lancome, and everyone else.
Bravo to that.
Any other questions? It's a safe sharing space, so let's have it.
I think it's more.
You can use mine.
I think it's more an addition to what you guys have said. So I work in the hair care space. I'm a curl stylist and educator. So I know we worked with Winnie. But I feel that in the conversation of beauty, when we're speaking about the spectrum of colours and foundations, there's also the spectrum of curls and texture within hair. And as a black woman, an unambiguous black woman of West African heritage, I find that when we speak about curly hair, there's certain textures that aren't included. And so when you were speaking about, what was it, you said something about suitable for all hair types, that's something that really triggers me as well, and the fact that there is a nuance. Although the products can definitely be used for all hair types, it's about representing that. And I often find that in campaigns, I'll see somebody that is maybe like me or has part of my heritage, as in they'll be, if I'm going to be honest, of mixed heritage, but they'll be very likely not be a black woman as I am. And then there is other, it's a bit of a rant, I'm sorry. So there's other kind of beauty kind of industries that are trying to, I suppose, champion diversity, but again, in those spaces, the imagery may be of a black woman, but the panel or the people that are within there is no black women there. So it's just me really saying that that's something that really needs to be recognized. And I suppose if I'm quite shy and quite nervous, so when you don't speak out, then you can't, I feel it's hard to sort of complain. So just me speaking out and saying, well, this is something I see within my industry, and yeah, just to share that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I 100% back that up as well. That's actually why we launched an industry report called The Texture Gap, actually highlighting this exact same thing. I think things are, there was a time when, you see a beauty brand launch and it would have 3 different ethnicities, a Caucasian lady, maybe a lady, an Asian lady, and then a black woman. But then you're absolutely right when you look at who's sitting behind that, who's actually contributing to those campaigns, to those formulations. There needs to be a very, very clear pipeline to attract people and then retain people throughout the organization, because that's how an organization actually starts thinking inclusive first, not just as an afterthought at the point at which the product's already launched and we need to shoot a campaign. So thanks for also adding that point.
What advice do you give to someone starting in the industry?
My advice is to read everything. I don't think you can educate yourself enough in anything, so just read everything that's available to you from lots of different voices, and honestly just reach out to people. You will get 100 no's. I think I probably clocked about 10,000 no's, but somebody will say yes. So you have to back yourself, and you have to be brave, and you do just have to slightly harass people online. DM me, I'll come back to you.
I definitely say just show up as yourself authentically and go after everything that you want. Work hard, and like Billie said, yeah, you're going to get the no's, but keep pushing and knocking the doors, and you definitely get into those spaces that you want to be in.
I've slid into Rihanna's DM before to ask if she'd be on my board of advisors. Still not replying, but you never know. Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, I'm Jaylene. Nice to meet you all, and thank you for talking with us. So for me, of course I'm a black woman, but I also had dyslexia, and I feel like that's kind of not looked into very well. So I've done a placement in a cosmetic beauty manufacturing company, and I felt as though they couldn't understand me very well. And it's not as if I'm not doing the work. I am doing the work, but the way I think is different to you, and they couldn't understand that. And I feel like a lot of companies, they don't really look into that per se. So I feel like a lot of industries now need to start doing, I don't know if you've heard of dyslexia learning, that Richard Branson has now come up with as an actual skill. We should not look down on it, but we should actually uplift it, because we actually have the brains to look things out the box rather than yourself, for example. And I feel like a lot of companies needs to be on board to do that type of training. So that's something I'll just say. Thank you.
Thank you for adding that very, very important point. I don't know if anyone here has seen the latest sex education season, but there was this young guy on a wheelchair. Everybody was doing their about to prepare to do their mock exams upstairs. Nobody knew he was downstairs. The lift was broken, and he spoke out, right? And then all the kids in school bandied together with him, and they're like, until you fix it, we're not all going to do our exam. So I think absolutely there's that element of advocating, but I will also encourage us, anyone who's a senior leader here, to let's not only put the onus on the affected, right? Let's also take the opportunity to learn about things that are separate from our own lived experiences, because that's how we can actually start to meet in the middle with these conversations. But thank you for raising that.
I'll just give a quick comment. To the person who mentioned that, what advice for someone who's just starting out in the industry, as someone who's only pretty much new to the industry as well, just a year, I think the whole concept of DEI is a little bit tricky, because what I've noticed is that a lot of companies are now using that as a marketing scheme. You know, it's all about an image, it's all about creating an image. Oh, you look great to have you on our team, it looks great for the photo ops, come on board, have a seat, but could you just sit in the corner and be quiet? And that's something that I've personally experienced. And then I know we mentioned, Billie mentioned earlier that, you know, you need to speak up, you need to have courage, but then again, you're a black woman, you're aggressive, you're loud, you're too opinionated, all of that stuff. So I get that it's something that's being receptive in just globally. I get the concept, but it's still a long way to go. It's a very long way to go, honestly. And it does feel like an uphill battle. So yeah, I just kind of want to say to that person, be prepared. Be prepared.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I definitely hear what you're saying, but I also believe that perhaps a little bit more perseverance. The reason why I say that is because my mum's generation, my mum was a marketing executive at an American bank. To have a black woman as a marketing executive in an investment bank, almost unheard of. And, you know, she had to face certain hurdles, etc., etc. But now I've got friends who work at Morgan Stanley and all the rest of it, and there's a lot of them in that space. And I know it's taking, maybe 20 years to get there. I really and truly believe we're now in a space where people are more accepting, more tolerant, and more inclusive, more warm, more relatable. I know, I hear your pain because I've experienced it, but I also believe that just have a little bit of perseverance and keep showing up as you are, keep doing the hard work that you do, keep being courageous, keep being yourself. You will eventually get to a place where you will have that influence to make the change. That same feeling that you feel right now of, I just kind of feel excluded here. Once you work your way to the top and they've trusted you and you're there, you bring on people who are just like you to where you want them to be. And with time, we will influence change. I think it's a game of perseverance as well. But I hear what you're saying.
Can I just say, I've been in the industry now probably about nearly 40 years. And when I started, I never saw a person of colour anywhere. And within that, realm of the industry. But I was really motivated to say, do you know what, I might be a person of colour, but I know what I'm talking about, I know what I'm doing. And it's been an absolute journey of ups and downs, and we don't think you're fit for this and you're fit for that, but you keep going, you keep persevering. And I'm proud that I was one of the first black chairmen of one of the organisations that was top of the beauty industry.
Congratulations.
Whatever people think, I come and bring me to it. I don't change me, I bring me to it. And we keep fighting and we keep pushing. And that's what you've got to do. Be strong, be yourself, and definitely you will get there. Yeah.
I'd also like for us as an industry, right, when we talk about the idea of diversity, it actually makes an industry more creative. A non-diverse industry becomes stagnant very, very, very quickly. It's not just the responsibility of the affected, it's our collective responsibility to see a beauty industry that continues to thrive. that 24.5 billion number, it has the capacity to be so much bigger. So I would also continue to encourage leaders within organizations take an interest, truly understand it. It's no longer, we can't do inauthentic campaigns anymore. We're going to need to look deeper and look at policies that are a lot more, like have staying power. So I think it's both, keeping the perseverance, but also let's also do the work to meet in the middle.
And also from what you're saying, so you do deal with microaggressions, but I think the challenge was try to fit in. So you're trying to fit in a constraint of a white box, and you can't because our experiences are so different. So from what you're saying, be authentic. You're going to think about yourself as brown, bold, and beautiful, and stick with it.
Yeah.
I'd like to echo that. Just recently, I was doing exactly what you said, be bold and just go for it. And I spoke to a wonderful lady at Hello Publication who's allowing me to talk about Diwali and feature fashion and beauty, and it means so much to me being Muslim as well. So just going back to that point, just be brave, and there is optimism. If you find the right person that listens to you, they will. So just don't give up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Can I just add that I think, Tumi, you touched on authenticity, and we talk about encouraging beauty, encouraging diversity in the industry, but I think the new generation, especially with TikTok, and we're seeing faces around the world, and people's eyes are being opened to, I think there'll be a readjustment, hopefully, and I think the example that I'd give of that is actually Victoria's Secret, and I remember growing up, and I would watch the Victoria's Secret fashion show, and all my friends would get together and be like, oh my god, Google it, that's what we want to look like. And then our eyes were open to all these other versions of beauty. And I actually think Victoria's Secret, rather than they should have been encouraging it, they've fallen to the wayside a little bit because they weren't setting that example initially. And I personally, you go into a Victoria's Secret now and you've got all the different body types, and a skin tone bra is now, I have mine, I have my sister's, it's very different, etc. But because they didn't set that precedent, and I associate them with what they used to represent so strongly, I actually wouldn't shop there anymore. So I would say, I feel like beauty brands who choose to, rather than just encourage it, with full force, embrace it and celebrate it, they're going to be the most successful in the long run.
Amazing point.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
Which is quite important. I think especially for the senior people in the beauty industry or in any industry, when you do sort of get to a certain position, I think it's important that we do really look after people coming in and be an ally and really walk the walk. So, so many times I see senior leaders in all types of industries, not just in beauty, where they've got to a certain position and kind of get to a point of pulling the leg up behind themselves. And I think it's so important to be able to be an ally to people like this lady here or whoever, just be approachable. I just think it's really important for us to be approachable and to be and to just try and help others. So I would just say, once you kind of get to a certain position in whatever industry or field you're in, just it costs nothing to be kind. It costs nothing to just give a bit of advice. If there's any mentoring schemes, I'm a firm believer of mentoring and coaching and sharing knowledge. Especially from a minority ethnic background, from a family that nobody had any corporate experience. I'm still the only black person in our commercial team in the company I work for. So it's really difficult to draw on people's experiences close to me. So I've had no choice but to look outside. And I've had some wonderful allies from all races, actually, who have championed me and helped me and given me advice. And I just think it's really important that people, certainly younger people reach out to people, and you might be surprised, reach out and ask for advice or ask for guidance. But certainly for the senior leaders in any organisation, please, you know, it costs nothing to just give a bit of advice, hold somebody's hand, refer people. You know, if you hear of a job role going, or if you hear of an opportunity, refer different types of people. I'm a firm believer of that anyway. So it's just a comment. It wasn't really a question. I just think it's really important for us to remember that it's hard for everyone, and we were once that person perhaps who was trying to get into a particular area. So just always look up and look down. That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, well, that's been thought. It really did help add to this section and liven up the conversation. So really, really appreciate it. So as we go off to our respective jobs, let's just go walk the walk.